Well, New York mayoral candidate Zohran Mamdani made an appearance on The View on Wednesday. At one point in the show, he was accused by co-host Sarah Haynes of making inflammatory statements about Israel. Take a look.
You're running for mayor of New York and not prime minister of Israel, but you've made inflammatory statements like calling Israel an apartheid state and questioning its right to exist as a Jewish state. Just this week, you were evasive with a reporter about condemning Hamas. Given New York has the largest Jewish population outside of Israel, why should voters who see this as a moral red line trust your clarity and judgment?
Part of what Mamdani had to say in response.
So to be very, very clear, of course I condemn Hamas. Of course I've called October 7th what it was, which is a horrific war crime. And of course, my belief in a universality in international law is also the same set of beliefs that have led me to describe what's happening in Gaza as a genocide. Because what we see, what we see is a war crime being answered with war crimes.
The frontrunner to be NYC's next mayor has faced heat for his comments on the matter before. He's called Israel an apartheid state and said if he's elected mayor, he would order police to arrest Benjamin Netanyahu if the Israeli prime minister traveled to New York.
Later during his appearance on The View, Mamdani was also pressed over his stance on policing in New York City. He previously called for defunding the police and said the NYPD was a threat to public safety. But eventually, he had walked back some of those comments. Here was him explaining how working in government has changed his perspective.
After that, becoming an assembly member and learning about the ways in which you deliver justice is by intertwining it with safety. Can't be done alone. And learning that behind the headlines, behind the caricatures, we're speaking about police officers who are just trying to do their best. And my job as a mayor is to represent those officers who put their lives on the line, represent Muslim New Yorkers who were illegally surveilled, represent Black and brown New Yorkers who've been the victims of police brutality, and do all of it
and
with
Jewish
a commitment.
Americans
Absolutely.
And white
Absolutely.
people, everybody. You talk about everybody.
The way recent polling continues to show Mamdani holding a big lead over his opponents, Andrew Cuomo and Curtis Sliwa.
Yeah, there's been a lot of focus on his Israel views, which to me are not the most relevant criteria here. He's not running for a national position. He's running to be mayor of New York City. I'm very glad, obviously, to hear him condemn Hamas. I think that's a very low bar to clear, but not everyone is able to clear it. So good for him on that, for sure. I find it interesting, him basically saying he's evolved on the police issue in the last 4 years because he entered government service in that time period. It's good reminder rather that he is not very experienced to be running New York City.
We want younger people in the congregation. You said you've seen all these grandparents.
Yeah, I think
so. Which one is it, Robbie?
Ground between being an assemblyman for a term and been in Congress for 800 years, but fine. I'm glad.
Trump had zero government experience, so it's all. Sometimes it works out.
And isn't it working out?
To you. Of it. He doesn't want to defund the police anymore. The things he tweeted in 2020 were just so entertaining along the lines of progressive, woke nonsense. We have the police are anti-queer, blah, 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 defund them. So he's backflipped from all that. You could see him somersaulting on the that would be a fun
stage
sight
of The
to
View. See. Yeah, that would be fun. What do you make of this?
So I'm going to unpack the whole thing. So we're talking about 2020, painting the picture of, a private.
It wasn't 100 years ago.
I know, a person.
5 years ago.
Right, a person.
I remember
you cited his lack of experience, so then I'm assuming he was a private citizen at the time, yeah? Tweeting some thoughts about defunding the police. There was heightened sense of stress to people in communities of color due to what was happening while we all were watching our phones obsessively because we were locked down in the house because of some rules and, precautionary rules that we both felt a little bit went too far, right, with COVID, that we can talk about for hours. I feel a little bit. You feel way too far. So we were in the house staring at our phones and watching police brutality happen and getting uncomfortable. And so it was a rise that if no one is going to listen after a series of events, then let's just start taking the money out of police departments and people who are taught to maybe react in that way because a lot of the leaders of these police departments, police chiefs, were confused about why some of their staff was behaving this way. So maybe the problem is in the training. Maybe the problem is in the fact that there's not enough community police. Maybe the issue is the fact that there's not enough conversation. And when people have mental health issues, addressing them with people who are experts in mental health. These were some of the conversations around what the funds that you defund some of the police department would go to. And so now that he's evolving, we're seeing that as people have different issues in cities that have crime, they've said recently, Democratic cities, I'll take support from President Trump in federal ways to get more police officers to stop and avoid some crime happening that's had a little bit of an uptick since COVID, or change went down. Either way, to make our cities safe, that's the goal for everyone. And so I think there's nuance there, understanding the time and understanding how him having worked in Congress know that majority of police officers, which I said on record multiple times, are great people. My uncle was a police officer. I think that they protect and serve our community. When we have someone who does something bad, obviously that's a problem. It should be pointed out and made an example of.
But the idea that there was some widespread or structural mistreatment of mistreatment of a specific identity group from the police, rather than certainly incidents we saw, but that it was something structural, and that the answer to that was to hollow out the police department, was never a popular opinion. It is not one that has stood the test of time, in my belief. I certainly support aspects of criminal justice reform. I support better training for police. I'm not going to spend less money on it. Training costs money. Right. Got to spend more money on it. I don't want people being racially profiled or surveilled. I don't want people being treated too aggressively, regardless of race, and so on and so forth. That's what most people think.
Well, I think a lot of Republicans at the time were breaking it down to a fact of having to do with there being a bad apple. And so when you talk about a police officer being a bad apple, that analogy is so trash to so many people, because a bad apple doesn't kill people. And so when we're seeing incidences, and several instances over time, of aggressive force or of deaths happening at the hands of police, one is too many. And if it ends up in a life being lost of an American life,
their work
by
is
someone
the
that's
use of
supposed
force,
to,
so they're going to be
I know, but they're supposed to protect. And when you see that it's happening, like the way that they respond, there's instances of being more aggressive when the person is of color, or particularly a man of color. Well, then that becomes a little bit discomforting to the everyday person of color in this country. That's like, why is my son's experience, or why is my...
I'm sorry, the statistical evidence of that is not
Okay, so how many of your friends have experienced police brutality?
It's just...
How many of your friends?
That would just be
How many of your
anecdotal.
friends? Name them. How many? Do you have examples?
But
no, I want to know. How many of your friends? Because I can name several. And I can hand out the incidents, starting with my younger brother. So that's what I'm saying. Like, if it's relevant in my life as a black woman, I'm telling you. I don't want to know about statistics. I'm telling you about a lived experience of people of color.
But that could be for a variety...
I don't think you have one example.
That could be for a variety of reasons that don't have anything to do with race. Most of my friends are...
Well, what would be the reason? If people were driving their car and then not doing anything, have no...
Income level and class. People are...
Either way, that's terrible that our police are trained to treat people with lower income level and class.
Okay, but when we had a whole... burning every city because it's about race, and then I'm like, well, I would like some evidence it's actually about race, when it is more people who live in lower income areas there's disproportionate levels of crime there, and so there's disproportionate levels of policing there, and for historical reasons of mistreatment of African Americans, there are more black people in low-income areas, so there could be a number of correlations.
And that's why people were
it's
calling...
more likely that because you're black, it's that if you're black, you're more likely to be somewhere that's going to be over.
But that's why it's systemic, because we know all the reasons why people of color would be in that situation, and so those things have to start to be solved, which is where we agree upon. Of course, defunding the police, no, they need funds to get better training and better people and better recruitment.
Right.
But also, we need to
solving...
solve the actual issue, which is the sparse treatment or equal treatment of people of color, and how different things from loans and being able to create wealth, or places like Tulsa, Oklahoma, where the cities were burned down when they did create wealth, provide a pathway to poverty. And then that's generational. And so then you're wondering why people are living in these lower income areas. It's like, okay, well, we have to discuss the whole history and think about how to rectify it before we just talk about, well, we're going to overly target communities of color. I think that's a bad solution. And so when people were yelling, defund the police, that was a terrible slogan.
Right.
We need funding in police departments. We also need funding in all these areas so that we can try to solve the long-term problem of creating a truly equal playing field for all Americans, regardless of race, creed, socioeconomic experience. That's the goal for America. That's what we're supposed to be living for.
You caught me on the spot. I have known people, I've witnessed people be handled by the police too aggressively at protest events and other things. I've seen it happen. I'm not denying that it happens. I'm parsing the just because we know people, the statistics of it is maybe a different thing. But I'm not saying police brutality is not a problem. I expect the best of government employees across the board. Police are government employees, and we pay their salaries. So them, just like the people who work at the Department of Education, public teachers, firefighters, employees of the government, all of them, they work for us, and they should be well paid, and but we are entitled to excellent service, and if they're not providing that service, they should be fired. So it's no different for police or anyone else.
We can agree on that.
All right. We got more to talk about on Rising. Stay with us.